Hey, what's up guys? Hey, welcome back to another video. Now, this is going to be a Destro burst guide, more focused around PvP here, but this would be also relevant for PvE if you were trying to do something similar for some reason. We're going to be talking about a few things. Today, we unlocked the bottom row of Bonesmith for Necrolord. Now, if you're not Necrolord, most all of this will still apply to you. This is kind of just one additional layer of damage amplification that we're able to get as Necrolord. So we're using the Bonesmith Soulbind for this setup. Ashen Remains is the only potency conduit that we have. And then Hairmir's or Airmir's, I don't know how you say that, Airmir's Arsenal is going to be the Soulbind thing that we're kind of basing this around. Now, this just came out today, so we still have to do a lot of testing with it, but it's pretty interesting. So far. Now, this is going to be every 10 critical strikes that we get, we're going to gain an 18% crit bonus for 10 seconds. Now, this does have a 60-second internal cooldown, but this is going to basically work like a pseudo Dark Soul setup. So if we can line all this up, it's very, 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 very potent. Now, the other thing to mention here is we are running the Madness Legendary. This also is really interesting. We crafted this today, so still have a lot of testing to do with this, but I wanted to show you guys some things that we had kind of figured out, at least initially, messing around with this. First things first is that this is a 3-second buff. So just show you guys real quickly how it works. I don't have a weak aura set up for it, but you can see the buff here in the top right. Oh, and this weak aura does have the little time ticker right there. You can see the duration of the buff. Now we get a 3-second buff, which is pretty short, and it's pretty hard to play around that in most situations. However, in RPGs, I think it is going to be feasible for us to be able to utilize this buff, pretty consistently. The fact that it's 3 seconds means that we actually can't fit any casts in between the two Chaos Bolts except for instant casts. This is actually kind of a big deal because I didn't actually think you were going to be able to fit any casts in the way that this worked, but you are. So let me show you here. I'm going to build up to 4 shards. And we can flag Chaos Bolt, can flag Chaos Bolt, and you'll see that was 12k. This one is going to be hitting for like 18k, right? We also did get our crit buff here, so that's why it was a little bit amplified. But point being is that you can fit an instant cast in between the Chaos Bolts and still benefit from the Chaos Bolt bonus damage. There are a few things when we're talking about the talents that are pretty significant for this build. Reverse Entropy is very, very big if you can get this all lined up. Paired with the legendary, for me with my gear, we're at, just under 15% haste. My second Chaos Bolt is a 1.3 second cast time. So this is really significant in like rated battleground situations or just BGs in general, because that second Chaos Bolt comes out really fast. It's pretty hard for people to react to it. It's a really, really kind of compact, big burst that you're pumping out. Much more noticeable than if you're not running the legendary as far as how far those Chaos Bolts are spaced out. Now, we're also running Focus Chaos for the PvP talents. This is obviously very impactful for Chaos Bolt damage. The other thing worth mentioning here is on the 45 row, I am running Grimoire of Sacrifice. I probably am going to run this virtually all the time with this setup because you have kind of an interesting use of your conflags with this setup so far and kind of how I'm playing it, where you're not really spacing them out necessarily to optimize Roaring Blaze as a talent and the value you would be getting from Roaring Blaze. You're really kind of trying to use them in specific burst windows paired with your Chaos Bolts. Since you can squeeze in instant cast in between these Chaos Bolts, you're going to sometimes be wanting to use Conflag in between your Chaos Bolt casts to give yourself an additional flashover proc, getting that backdraft haste as well. And so for that reason, we're not really trying to spread out and maintain Roaring Blaze in this playstyle. So I think I'm going to go with Grimoire Sacrifice here most of the time. This also ends up actually doing a ton of damage. So this is also kind of caters more to that like burst setup because getting a couple of these procs in this burst window is just an extra couple thousand damage that you can add on top of all the numbers. And then the other thing here is Dark Soul Instability. You could be also running Soul Conduit. Potentially I could see working well with this. If you're having issues with this getting dispelled or spell stolen or something like that. But for demonstration purposes, we're going to run this. Now, the way that the Bonesmith, back to the Soulbind here, the way that this works is this is a buff that we're going to get. It'll stack up to 9 times. And then once it gets to the 10 stack, it activates a 10-second buff, giving us 18% crit. Now, this is pretty significant for Destro for a couple reasons. One, we have a guaranteed crit in Chaos Bolt where we can kind of intentionally proc this at certain points. It's a little bit of RNG because our initial application of any spells, right, immolate casts, incinerate, conflag, things like that, our direct casts critting will add a stack to this buff. Your damage over time from things like immolate will also add a stack to this buff. So it's a little bit of RNG. It's not 100% like you can plan around it, but because Destro does have the guaranteed crit in Chaos Bolt, you can kind of intentionally trigger it at a specific point if it doesn't trigger, you know, at that same point otherwise. Basically leading up to where we get to 8 or 9 stacks and then going into our big double Chaos Bolt or triple Chaos Bolt windows. Now, the other thing worth mentioning with this is that Infernal does not actually contribute to these stacks at all, and your primary imp does, or your primary minion. So like I summoned an imp, for example, when the fireball crit, it would give me a stack of this buff. So it makes me think that the interaction of this is your primary minions only and your direct damaging spells. Again, infernal damage and the immolation aura from infernal critting, things like that do not contribute to this at all. So I think in a perfect world, when you're ready to stack this, you would basically like Cataclysm or some kind of AoE. The other thing that was interesting is Rain of Fire crits actually do contribute to this too. So there are some AoE components where we can intentionally stack this up very fast, potentially in like an RBG setting via Cataclysm and Rain of Fire if you wanted to do that and then go that route. But basically what we're going to be doing in this setup is trying to build up to 8 or 9 stacks, and then we go into our big burst damage. Now for the big burst damage, what we want to do is basically get up to 5 shards, and in a perfect world, either have Backdraft already procced with 2 stacks or have both conflagrates up, and we're going to lead into the burst with 1 conflag, double Chaos Bolt, and then another conflag into our 3rd Chaos Bolt. This is going to give us the Madness buff on the last 2 of those 3 Chaos Bolts. And if we have the Infernal up with that conflag as well in between the 2nd and 3rd Chaos Bolt, we actually generate enough shards in that quick succession to basically get all of that off in that time and basically have, in a perfect world, this crit buff proc, and we have all of our unused trinkets, Blood Fury, Dark Soul Misery, all of that stuff procced at the same time. For me and my current gear and this target dummy, it's hitting around 27, 28k Chaos Bolts on those big amplified Chaos Bolts. So let's go ahead and try and kind of build this up here. So we're at 4 stacks. This is going to be an interesting playstyle, and I don't know how easy it's going to be to utilize in PvP, but I could see this actually being very strong in RBGs, and I intend on trying this out here later today. Reason being is because it's pretty common in RBGs that you're not necessarily always dumping your Chaos Bolts, and you're really trying to go for these big burst windows or hard swaps in these team fights to really blow up one person, right, and get a kill in the team fight. Now you see here we're up to 6 stacks. So we got to get ready. Once we get to 8 stacks, I'm going to pop my Infernal and then, oops, I accidentally clicked that guy. Pop my Infernal and then we're going to go. Now the reason you want to have the Infernal up before is you don't want to waste the global during this 10-second window if you can avoid it, as that's obviously not optimal. Of course, we're going to be trying to do this and I'm not going to be getting any crits during this whole time. It's going to be a real pain. Okay, there we go. So I'm going to go ahead and Infernal. I'm going to conflag. Chaos Bolt, conflag, Chaos Bolt. Now you see that last one there, 27k on those Chaos Bolts, 76k damage between those 3 Chaos Bolts. 76k damage between those. Now, keep in mind, obviously that ramp up is a little bit finicky. It's going to be pretty hard to reliably and consistently be able to line up this Soulbind, because of the nature of it, you know, proccing off of our damage over time effects and things like that. But point being is if you can set up a weak aura for this, watch when it procs and potentially even do a smaller setup. Like this setup I'm showing you is 3 Chaos Bolts. That's going to be tough to pull off a lot of the times. But just being in situations where you know it's about to proc and having 4 shards and just dumping 2 Chaos Bolts into that crit bonus without Dark Soul and all that stuff, right? Just like double Chaos Bolt with an 18% damage amp on it consistently is going to be, I think, a very strong asset to have from a Soulbind perspective when we're talking about Destro specifically. So anyways, I've found this to be pretty fun so far, just messing with it. Today being the first day that this is actually live. And so hopefully you guys are able to mess around with this as well. Any other Necrolords out there. If you're not Necrolord, this legendary is still a ton of fun to play with. I think this is going to be a really fun legendary for RBGs. I'm really looking forward to the team fights, testing this one out. But hopefully this helps you guys kind of understand some things regarding this legendary and this soulbind, because those were two things I was really eager to test out today as we just got our hands on it. So yeah, just keep that in mind. You definitely can be doing the triple Chaos Bolt setups with this legendary if you play it right and, you know, have enough haste and all that fun stuff. So let me know, like always, if you guys have any questions, leave them down below and I will always do my best to get to all of those. Thanks so much for hanging out, guys. I appreciate it. And I'll catch you guys in the next one. See ya.